Hi, everyone. Welcome to Helping Teachers Grow. I'm Rachel Dowell, and I will be giving you step-by-step instructions for how you can build a professional learning plan that meets the needs of the teachers in your building or diocese. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about my background. As this title slide says, I love professional learning. The reason that I think I love professional learning is because of my personal path as a teacher. I am alternatively certified in the state of Oklahoma. I started off my career as a Latin teacher, and just coming into the Latin classroom from being a college student, I just didn't have the training that I needed to be a successful teacher. Every day was pretty difficult because I just felt like everything that I was doing in the classroom was hard. Managing students was hard. Staying on top of what I was supposed to be teaching was hard. And I felt like there had to be better ways to do things. There had to be more effective ways to serve students. And that really started off a whole career of being a professional learner instead of just being a teacher. So I taught Latin for a total of about 10 years. I was activities director at a high school in Oklahoma City. And then I became an associate superintendent at the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. I specialized in curriculum and instruction, and I really do think that that was kind of the pinnacle of my professional learning career. And I learned a lot of ideas about how professional learning could be more effective and even joyful for teachers, than it often is. I credit that to meeting some incredible other educators, like Jill at NCEA or Ali Rodman at the Learning Loop. And people like these ladies really, it was the sharing of ideas, I think, that has just helped me continue to grow. And so if you take one thing away from this presentation, which I hope you take more than that, but if you only take one thing away, I hope it is to grow your professional network and just share and steal ideas, give credit where credit is due, but definitely make those connections because it makes your life as a professional learning designer, even if you're a principal or an instructional coach or whatever your job is, it will make it easier. I am currently Dean of Curriculum and Instruction at Mount St. Mary's in Oklahoma City. It is a wonderful school and I am glad to be there. My professional interests include technology, instructional coaching, inclusive education, and professional learning, of course, and that is among lots of other things. If you ever need anybody to talk data with, especially NWEA map testing at the high school level, I am your girl. I also want to give a shout out to 3 other presentations that are somewhat related to this. If you search the NCEA catalog for Ali Rodman, Rachel Dowell, Diane Floyd, or Allison Helm, we are giving presentations over a teacher observation tool. We're taking you from the design aspect to the really technical aspect to how that influenced professional learning in the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City in a 3-part series at this NCEA. So please check that out if that's something that interests you. So I want to give you a chance now to open up all of the presentation materials that I'm going to be talking about today. You can go ahead and open up this slideshow if that is something that you would like to do. So you can find the link at bit.ly/helpingteachersgrow. That will give you the link to this presentation. There is a Jamboard that goes along with this presentation that I'm hoping at least a few people use to help collaborate and give each other ideas and brainstorm. So you can find that Jamboard at bit.ly/helpingteachersgrowjam. I have shared in a sample needs assessment, professional learning needs assessment with you. So you can open that up at bit.ly/21-22 needs assessment. And then there's a sample teacher survey that you can give to your teachers. at bit.ly/2122 or 21-22 PL teacher survey. So go ahead and press pause now and, open those materials up. So, presentation overview. These are the things that I hope that you get out of this presentation. So I hope that after you view this presentation and maybe connect with some other people on social media and maybe hang out on that Jamboard for a little bit and do some brainstorming, that you will be able to more confidently develop a professional learning plan for your teachers in the next school year. So the different steps of this will be establishing expectations for your site's professional learning, determining the professional learning needs of your teachers, surveying your teachers to identify the professional learning flight topics. We'll talk about what that means later. Developing professional learning flights, recognizing and celebrating teacher success, and evaluating a professional learning plan to make changes for the next school year. So step 1, establishing your guiding principles. What are the principles that will help you make sure that you're developing professional learning opportunities that fit the needs and culture of your school? So take a second and jump on that Jamboard and share your thoughts with me. So what are the principles that will help you make sure that you are developing professional learning opportunities that fit the needs and culture of your school? I think it's so important to figure out what your guiding principles are. And these are probably going to be related to your school's mission and vision. I suggest starting here so that you aren't, going down a rabbit hole trying to build professional learning that isn't going to support your school's mission and vision and values. So if you have a super collaborative school, you want to make sure that your guiding principles, feed into that and acknowledge that and, treat teachers like professionals. If you have specific goals, you might want to establish guiding principles that, of course, support those goals. So take a second and think about what the guiding principles for your school could be, and then in just a second, I will show you what ours are. Welcome back from your little break. So here are the 21-22 school year guiding principles for Mount St. Mary's in Oklahoma City. These are things that I believe as the, lead teacher, basically, as the Dean of Curriculum and Instruction at the Mount. And these are things that are already at least part of our culture. And if not part of our culture, we're really working toward fulfilling a goal that they become part of our school culture. So we say that data is part of a feedback cycle. So that is so important for students and teachers, and it's also important for administrators and teacher leaders and then the faculty. I learned from the Greeley Center, never collect a piece of information that you aren't going to look at. So we need to treat data like it's valuable, because it is. And if we're really not collecting, if we're not going to be looking at that data, then what's the point of collecting it? That's how you make teachers bitter, is by forcing them to do things that you never review. So that's the first guiding principle. Learning should be practical and implementable. So in graduate school, I went to school for educational administration and curriculum supervision. It was a great joy that basically every single class period, I would come home and I would feel like there was something that I could immediately use as a teaching professional in my classroom, even though it was administrative curriculum. So that really inspired in me that teachers should get something out of every single session that they go to. Every single professional learning event or activity should inspire something that they can use immediately, that's practical, that's tangible, that's implementable immediately. That doesn't mean that you can't do some long-term things, but it does mean that you need to be mindful of making sure that you're feeding your teachers and, not just making them look at a food buffet and watching them starve in the meantime. So the third guiding principle for next year for us will be including opportunities for collaboration and community. Community is a huge part of our school's culture. Our teachers really happen to like each other, which is wonderful. And so we really want to make sure that our professional learning, provides teachers with opportunities to work together, to, feed off of each other, since that's currently a strength in our community. So we want to continue to support that and help it grow instead of starving it. The fourth guiding principle is that professional learning is targeted to build on our strengths and support our deficiencies. So we shouldn't just be scattershotting things. We shouldn't just be saying like, I really love this, I really love this, this is a good conference. Ooh, can I go to Boston so that, I can go to Boston and not really care about the conference that I'm attending? Those things are fun, and those things are part, I think, of being a teacher, being able to learn about the things that you love. But I think that the intent in school-wide professional learning should really be teach teachers the things that they want to know about. So maybe not like their top passion, although it could be, but teach the teachers about things that they want to know about, but really help them, have a school focused goal. So build on the needs of your students and of your faculty. And you can throw in some of the more bells and whistly stuff as you go along. And then the final guiding principle that our school will have for next year is that even though professional learning is an expectation, it should be fun and its success should be celebrated. So, I think that this is something that I've learned from MTSS with student behavior, is celebrating student success. It doesn't hurt teachers to hear that they've done a good job. It doesn't hurt teachers to have a Jeans Day when they've successfully completed professional learning. In this system, what I'm going to be telling you about in a little bit is creating badges that teachers can put on their school profiles. And in their email signatures and things like that, that communicate to the greater community that these are the things that they have mastered, and also show students that they continue to be professional learners. So, we'll get to that in a little bit, but that's the idea. Okay, so the next step after you determine your school's guiding principles is you need to determine what your school's professional learning needs are. So there is an additional JAM. There's a new page on the Jamboard that you can use to brainstorm these. I am going to advise you to look at student performance data, teacher feedback from throughout the year, community or societal events, and then parent and student feedback when it comes to determining professional learning needs. So when I talk about student performance data, that can be everything from if your school is very good about tracking student formative assessments. If you guys have common formative assessments, you could use that. You could use summative test data, so like ACT or ACT Aspire, or you can use that benchmark data like NWEA's MAP testing. So looking at how students are performing and how students are growing should be one of the different things that you consider when you are developing a professional learning plan. Other things that you could also pay attention to are teacher feedback. So what are common things that teachers have been asking for throughout the school year? For instance, this year in my school, I have science teachers, who have been really good about looking out for professional learning needs or professional learning opportunities, and trying to be strategic about what they can go to. So I know that they have some standard related goals as a department. They're wanting to integrate NGSS more closely into their curriculum. So they've been looking out for those kinds of opportunities. So that would be the kind of thing that I would consider when writing my professional learning plan. And then community or societal events. In Oklahoma, we often have, I shouldn't say often, but sometimes we have really bad springs. And we'll have enormous tornadoes, and our students and faculty are having to deal with the repercussions of that. So you can think about, has anybody in our school community been affected by a tornado? Or this year, the thing that we're all thinking of is, how has COVID affected our students, and how can I address that in professional learning for next year? And then the final thing that I would tell you to consider when developing a professional learning plan is, think about the feedback that you've gotten from parents and students. So have you gotten qualitative feedback from your counselors that, a certain department seems to be kind of all over the place and not really aligned when it comes to grading policies or even curriculum? Do you hear students who transfer from one class into another and they're like, there is a huge disconnect between what I learned in this class and this class? Are parents saying things like, this school is great, but there seems to be kind of a classroom management problem in certain classrooms? Again, that's another type of qualitative feedback that you can take in and listen to, and put into your professional learning plan. So pause for just a second and head over to that Jamboard and join in the conversation with your peers and your colleagues about what your school's professional learning needs are. Welcome back. So here are Mount St. Mary's professional learning needs for next year. These are the main things that I have determined by looking at a needs assessment. So you can click on this link and it will take you to a sample needs assessment that I developed based on our Title II needs assessment that we use with OKCPS. So going through this needs assessment showed me that I have several different areas that I could really, that teachers could use some professional learning in. So I've identified formative assessments, UDL, Universal Design for Learning. We're an inclusive educational school, so we have kids of all sorts of different learning abilities in the same classroom. So UDL will help with that. Having engaging instructional strategies, developing strong lesson objectives, infusing Mercy values into our lessons. We are a school that is co-sponsored by the Sisters of Mercy in the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and we love those Mercy values. Using data to plan lessons. This is not the most popular thing, I think, among teachers, but it is something that's very valuable and that they need help with. We use Canvas, the Canvas LMS, and so I need to continue to train teachers on how to use Canvas like a pro. And then thinking about COVID and how it's affected our society, looking at healthy mental habits for students and teachers for next year. So these are all of the different professional learning needs that I've identified. I used a very specific needs assessment, but you don't have to. You can just brainstorm things. You can collaborate with other people, that you work with, like your admin team or counselors or teachers and teacher leaders. There are a whole variety of ways that you can determine what your professional learning needs are, but I do recommend that you, consider the 4 different strands of data when you are determining your professional learning needs. So step 3 is survey teachers. On this page, how many, on the previous page, I don't remember how many exactly different threads I had recommended, but it was like 7 or 8, and that is just too many for you to develop for your teachers for 1 year. It's too much in general. So really, what I recommend is, at this point, after you have determined your professional learning needs for your school based on data, based on feedback, is that you survey your teachers. So give them the 7 or 8 topics and ask them to choose the ones that they would most like to learn about for next year. So this could be what they're most passionate about. This could be what they think is going to be most useful to them. It could be what they're most uncomfortable with. It could be what they like the most. I mean, teachers could have a bunch of reasons for choosing what they choose. But basically just ask them to choose 3 different topics, limit it to that. Or in this teacher survey, it's basically a Likert scale. So I gave them all of the different options and I said, which ones would you like to know the most about? Which ones would you like to know the least about? And so I will take the top 3 and, you know, include that, basically develop professional flight plans based on those. So take a minute and look at that teacher survey. Feel free to make a copy of it and to change it based on the needs of your school site. So after sending out a survey to teachers, here are the results. Next year, we are going to focus on 3 topics: formative assessments, using Canvas like a pro, and healthy mental habits for students and teachers. So as the person at my school in charge of professional learning, of course, I'm disappointed about not having professional learning related to the data, but that just didn't make the priorities for this year. It doesn't mean it never will. It doesn't mean that I can't continue to support it, you know, throughout the year, but that's the one that I really wanted to do. But the teachers have spoken, and that's not what they really feel like they need to focus on. So I'm going to go with what they want. So now I'm going to show you how you can build professional learning flights based on what your teacher surveys have said. So now that you have some professional learning topics identified, what subtopics can help your teachers gain mastery? And where can you find content that you can use in your school's flight or professional learning flights? First off, let me say that I'm borrowing the term professional learning flights from Allie Rodman. She is a private consultant with the Learning Loop. So I worked with her at the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and she is she is somebody who knows a lot about professional learning. She's an expert. So the idea here is that you are going to build out a professional learning topic, maybe give it 4 or 5 different levels that your teachers can kind of stair-step their way to mastery with. So on a topic like formative assessments, you have to brainstorm what are the subtopics that really are important to mastering formative assessments. So take a second, I hope that was clear, take a second and go over to the Jamboard and, write down a professional learning topic and then come up with 4 or 5 stair steps that will help your teachers develop mastery of that particular topic. You can see what I've written for formative assessments if you need a little bit of help and guidance. And then when you come back, we'll talk about that example of formative assessments. So head over to that Jam for just a second. All right, so welcome back. What goes into a flight? Every flight should have those scaffolded subtopics. So that's really what makes it a flight, the scaffolded subtopics. That's what you were just brainstorming on Jamboard. If you just came back to this presentation, you're like, oh, I didn't understand that. That's not what I did. You can go back to that Jamboard. It's fine. You can also steal other people's ideas from that Jamboard. That's why it exists. Okay, back to this. Every flight should have those scaffolded subtopics. Every flight should have a clearly defined objective. Just like teachers in the classroom, when you are creating professional learning, you need to know what the end goal is, and you need to help support your teachers on their way there. You need to have easily accessible content. This 60-page book might be great, but if it's not easy to get a copy of it and you have to give it to teachers physically, that's not great. Or it could, maybe be a little bit of a hassle. Or, like 60 pages is not a reasonable thing to ask teachers to read in like a week or a 2-week period of time. So these need to be smaller, digestible, easier things that your teachers can do. So, you're basically not creating a dissertation and asking teachers to go through that. That's too much. That's overwhelming. So it needs to be digestible and things that they can use immediately. So that practical aspect that we had already talked about. It needs to have a collaborative component as well, at least at our school. That is so important. I've already talked about that with our school culture. And so I really recommend that you consider how you can bring these to life. For instance, I will be hosting all of our flights on Canvas because we use Canvas as a school. A lot of schools use Google Classroom, so you might be posting your content onto Google Classroom. Whatever your method is for posting content so that your teachers can access it, you should have aspects of it that involve teachers talking to each other and teachers collaborating and brainstorming and all of that. We really want to make sure that professional learning continues to have that component of collegiality. So now that you have all of your scaffolded sub-content, you're ready to put it into your flight. Think about each level of your flight as something that might take 1 to 2 professional learning meetings. So maybe your school has a late start program where they start school an hour late and teachers meet in the morning. Maybe there is an early release program where students leave the building and teachers are expected to stay behind for an hour or two after the actual school day to make sure that they have time for learning. So however your school organizes it, if you were giving your teachers time for professional learning, this should probably take about an hour to 2 on the lower levels, and then probably 2 sessions on the upper levels up here. So for formative assessments, what I brainstormed was assessing lessons, and that's really lesson objectives using formative assessments. So making sure that that formative assessment is at the same level as the lesson DOK. Teachers, I think, oftentimes will use formative assessments, but maybe at a lower level or sometimes a much higher level than the lesson that they've currently taught. So that's if we're using a formative assessment to kind of make sure that students are all on board at the end of the lesson. And that's important, and a lot of teachers don't know how to make sure that those things are aligned. So that is our jumping off point when it comes to talking about formative assessments in this flight. So that would probably take my teachers about an hour. That's what I would scaffold or budget time for, about an hour to get through this content and also have some kind of collaborative component. At the intermediate level, we would be talking about popular formative assessment techniques. So that could be everything from like quizzes and Kahoot to asking good, solid questions and answers. I know you guys have had teachers. I have been the teacher who at times will just ask those simple yes and no questions when really I should be digging a little bit deeper or asking kids different kinds of questions. So there is a lot of content that you could dig into here for popular formative assessment techniques, and that's what I would budget about an hour for. Because formative assessments, there are so many different options, and your teachers might like to share what they do that's cool and interesting. Maybe you budget 2 different sessions for this. It's kind of up to you. Now, going to the next level for this subtopic, I'm thinking gathering formative assessment data. So this is making sure that you are collecting information that helps you as a teacher provide students with good and solid feedback. So I think some teachers struggle with making that connection between, like, closing that feedback loop between gathering formative assessment information and then giving feedback to students. So that leads right into the mastery level topic for the formative assessment flight, using formative assessment data to modify instruction. So how how do formative assessments impact your instruction? Because this should be basically like the engine that's running your classroom. If teachers are teaching and nobody is getting it, then they're not actually teaching. So I know that in this presentation, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but this is my initial brainstorm for my formative assessment flight. So where would I get content for this? I would be looking at articles. I would be looking at maybe short chapters from books that I've read, YouTube videos, for sure YouTube videos, teacher leaders in the building who already have ideas and want to share them. There are a variety of sources that you could use if you want to build this in-house. However, I do think that it's important, and also it's not really practical to think about you building out like 8 of these a school year, so that's another reason why I wanted to limit topics to maybe 2 or 3 flights that you build out for your faculty a year, and then eventually year over year you'll have a bunch that you can post on your school's LMS like Canvas or Google Classroom or whatever you guys are using. But it's also important to make connections in the community at fellow, sister schools, with people who do the same thing that you do, and communicate with each other, and, basically share all of these different flights and get a larger pool going that you can offer to your teachers instead of just things that you are solely responsible for. You could also look into using Title II money to pay teachers to help you build these things out over the summer. So you have some different options there. But, make sure that whatever you're doing is something that is reasonable for you to do and something that you can do. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. And then finally, celebrating teacher success. So after your teachers have finished their learning, celebrate them, reward them, shower them with recognition. They have, again, even though this is an expectation of their job, it will help teachers go above and beyond your expectations if you tell them good job for what they've done. If you give them little joyful things, like jeans days are huge in our school. Teachers just absolutely adore them. And it goes a long way, letting teachers wear jeans. So take a second, revisit that Jamboard, and then come back here in a second and we'll talk about the badge system. So one of the ways that I am showing recognition to teachers is using Canva.com. A lot of you guys have probably already used that to develop badges related to professional learning. So I just basically made a basic badge design, put the year on, put the topic, and then I've got novice, so only a quarter of it is not grade. Intermediate, half of it's filled in. Advanced, only a quarter left to go, and then master is that full color version right here. So I just made these pretty quickly on Canva and downloaded them as PNGs. And then teachers will have these available to put on their, under their profiles on our website, and their email signatures if they're particularly proud of some professional learning that they've done. There are a variety of ways that teachers can use these badges to communicate that they have done something and that they have been successful with it. So I am looking forward to launching this next year, and I hope that our teachers really like it. But it's just kind of a quick and easy way that we can celebrate their success and that we can communicate to the community and to parents that we are learners and that we take what we do in the building seriously. So the final thing that I will leave you with is once you have done this whole process and you have built out your flights and you have had your year, always evaluate your program. At the very end, always take a look back and say, what did we do well? What can we do better? What worked? What needs to be tweaked? What do we need to drop entirely? So successful programs are full of self-reflection and evaluation and, updating for the future. So I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. please remember to connect with me. You can find me on Twitter at RA Dowell. And I hope that you have a great NCEA. Thanks for coming to this session.